So today we're going to be learning how to exactly use your camera in settings within the camera and what exactly different types of lenses and do for the camera and just all around different sorts of camera settings. So where we're going to start is basically just what aperture and shutter speed are. Your aperture is located at the bottom here. It's usually expressed in a number between f1.8 and a number as high as f22 all the way up to f36, just depends on the lens. This number is actually represented by how much light is being let in the camera. Now, aperture is expressed backwards. A higher aperture, meaning a f22, will have letting less light come in the camera. The lens is closed more, whereas an f1.8 has the lens wide open, as another term they call it, and it's actually letting more light in. They call this a high aperture. Basically what aperture also controls is it controls the depth of field. So if we look at the two images here, this image was shot at an f2.8. This next image here was shot at an f18. You can see the difference in the depth of field that an f2.8 gives a very, very shallow depth of field, bringing in just what's in front with closest to the camera, whereas an f18 is going to really close that lens down and really give you everything that's in the photo. This might come handy, let's say you're taking a club photo. You don't want to be shooting a club photo at an f1.8 because your front row is going to be in focus, but your back row is going to be all out of focus. You might want to shoot your club photos at like an f11 so you get that nice crispness all across the frame. That's just one example of where you would use this. Also, if you're shooting at night, you want to shoot with those really high aperture lenses because you want that f2.8 when you're shooting at night because you want to let as much light into the camera as possible. If you shoot with an f22 out on the football field, you're really not going to get a lot of light coming in the camera. Your image is basically going to be black, which you do not want. So now we're going to talk about shutter speed. Shutter speed is expressed next to the aperture right here. The aperture is here and the shutter speed's here. The shutter speed right now I have it at 1/30th of a second, which you can see the image is very bright. If I'm shooting sports, this really isn't going to be feasible because you're going to get a lot of motion blur within the photo, which you can see here. This photo was shot at 1/30th of a second, which is super slow for sports. So what you're going to do is you're going to use your shutter speed dial and dial in any number above a 1/400, closer, higher to above like a 1/640, even a 1/800 if you're shooting some really fast sports like tennis and baseball. You're going to want those fast shutter speeds for those guys swinging those bats and pitchers and stuff. But as you can see, I'm at a 1/500 right now, and the image is super dark, which obviously we don't want that out on the field anywhere. So what we do to compensate this is we use a high aperture lens. Right now I'm at an f2.8, but even at f2.8 and a 1/500, good settings for sports action, my image is still really dark. So what you want to do is you want to digitally enhance the photo through ISO. So if you click your ISO button, a lot of the basic more cameras, it's found on the front. You press the Q button, then you press ISO. On this more advanced camera, it's found on the top. You'll see an ISO button at the top. So if you click this ISO button, it comes up with this screen. On the other cameras, it'll come up with a screen that's vertical. It's all different, but it all kind of works the same. So through ISO, we can actually enhance the photo, getting up really high into some high ISOs. Now this camera actually can achieve very high ISOs and have little grain within the photos. Some of the more basic Canons will have really bad grain at this high of an ISO, which you might in the forerun have to just suck it up and take it. But if not, on the lower cameras, you can get a little bit of motion blur and even go down to like a 1/400 just to get some extra light into the camera. But really on this Canon 6D, you're really going to want to shoot the high ISO to get those really good photos, motion photos where the limbs are in focus and everything's in focus. So right now we're shooting at we'll go up to a 1/500 f2.8, and we're at ISO 6400, which isn't bad for this camera. This camera can really push ISO really high and still achieve really good quality. So our next step is actually understanding ISO. ISO basically digitally enhances the photo inside the camera. The higher numbers that you get push more light out, but also at the same time, they're basically enhancing it so you get a lot of grain. So on the lower end cameras, if you got an ISO 6400, you're going to get a lot of grain on the computer, and even as a dominant photo on the page or on the newspaper, you're not going to want all that grain in there. So what you're going to want to do is either use a higher up camera like this one or something, you know, a little better, because if not, you're going to be getting really blurry photos and a lot of grain at night if you don't, you know, master the concept of the two together. So right now I'll go through an example. So right now I'm at a 1/60th f2.8 ISO 1000. If I was to push this all the way up to a, you know, ISO 12,000, you're going to start to see some grain. So basically, here's a photo I took. Basically, you know, it's the 160 f2.8 ISO 1000. We'll go ahead and take that photo, and that's what we get. Now, if I go and I start pushing this up really high, you'll start to see some really improved grain. So basically, if I just, you know, adjust my settings here and get it all the way up, and I get up to like, let's see, let's even push 25,000 and see what we get. We get probably a really grainy photo. Yeah, you see the grain, the detail isn't there. You see how faded the background is, how orange it turns all funky. And I mean, even if we push ISO 102,000, you can really start to see the grain of what really bad high ISOs can do to the camera. So here's a photo, ISO H2, which is really high, and here's a photo. So you can see the photo and the grain in the bottom, the shadows. It's really nasty. You do not want to shoot at that high of an ISO, obviously, ever. So next we're going to talk about white balance. White balance is basically adjusting the Kelvin inside the camera to adjust to the certain light source that's around, because you want to match what the light output that's coming from natural light into what's coming in the camera. So basically right now, somebody might get this camera and be like, oh no, my image is blue, as you can see on the screen. This is just a really nasty photo. It's, you know, blue, looks a little weird, and we do not want that when we're taking photos. So what you can exactly do is you can take your hand and you push the Q button, and you can scroll over all the way to auto white balance. This will automatically, as you can see, you know, kind of correct your photo into what matches the light that's coming out of the room into what needs to get into the camera, and corrects it. Most cameras, it's on the front here. Some it's on the top. You just kind of got to look around for it. Usually it says WB. Usually you'll see a bunch of, on the main screen, you might see, you know, a bunch of, see if I can get it up here. The main camera, you might see like AWB, that's what you want. If you scroll over, you might see like a house icon. That means it's on the, you need to switch the white balance. If you go inside, you're not going to be wanting to using cloudy indoors. You're going to want to be on auto white balance or tungsten light or white fluorescent or something that's going to be suit to that environment. So that's basically it for white balance. I just know a lot of people get the camera and they don't know why their image is blue, and that's one of the reasons why. You just need to make sure it's on AWB right here on this home screen. That's basically it. So next we're going to move on to autofocus points. The autofocus points are basically where the camera is choosing where it wants to focus and where you're telling it to focus. Right now you can see I'm set to auto because all these little dots are white right here. If I go in and press this button over here, all the way to the right, usually it's in the top right corner of every Canon camera, you'll see it's on automatic selection, which is what I had said before. So basically, if we use our dial up here, we can actually scroll over and use our trackpad and scroll to where we want the camera to focus at. Now, if somebody's shooting like an environmental portrait, if the subject is over in the left-hand side of the frame, they might just want to be able to, you know, click and shoot, focus. That's where the face is. They want to focus right in the face, so they click that, and, you know, basically they press the shutter button, go back, and they leave it like that, they take their photo and they give it to you, and all of a sudden you're shooting football and why isn't the camera focusing? So basically what you're going to want to do is click your button up in the right corner, looks like a little cross, and you'll see it's on manual selection, and that's why it's not focusing. So you'll press your little dial up at the top, and eventually you should get an automatic selection. Once you get automatic selection, all the AF points light up. You're going to want to press the shutter button, or it'll just automatically time out and it'll go back to your menu here. You want all these dots to be white because you want the camera to be looking for where the motion is all around those AF points, not just in one specific one when shooting sports or something. So next we'll go into how to properly expose your photo. One trick that most people don't know about is you can actually press the record button or the start and stop button on these cameras and actually pull up a live preview, which most people don't know about. Even at such a high level I still even use this because it's so much easier to quickly, properly expose your shot and know exactly what you're getting for your final exposure. So basically, what you can do with this is you can see how your shot's going to turn out. You see, if I take this photo right now, my shot turns out the same as what it was set to on the previous viewing screen. So basically what you can do is you can use your dial up at top for your shutter speed, and you can dial in whatever shutter speed you want. If I want a 1/1000, obviously I'm not letting very much light into the camera, so look how dark the image gets. So I can say, wow, I need to brighten my image up. So I can brighten it up to where I want to, and I'm good to shoot. Now I'm at a 1/125, which is ideal for just regular shooting, but if you're shooting sports at night, you're not going to want to use that shutter speed. So you might go in there, compensate with some ISO, and turn your shutter speed up a little bit. Now I'm at a 1/320 and I'm pretty properly exposed. So next what you want to do to know if your exact shot is actually properly exposed and it's not just your eyes, you want to look at your light meter down here. Your light meter actually tells you if your shot's properly exposed. If you look on the screen right now, it's right in the middle, so it's pretty properly exposed. You see, if I dial in a really high shutter speed that makes the image dark, my little guy moves to the left. Now he's at like -2.5, which means the shot is very underexposed. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to raise your shutter speed. So you see right at the 1/320, it's right in the middle, shot looks good, I'm ready to shoot. Another thing about this light meter that's really cool is it'll even tell you when you're overexposed. So not just to tell you if you're underexposed, but even if you're overexposed. So let's say my shot is very white, I have the ISO up really high, and I show up to go shoot, a pep rally or something, and it's really bright. It'll actually tell you over here +3. Wow, it's really bright. Another cool feature is if you turn your live view off, you can physically look through the lens here, and you'll see a little light meter moving left and right. As you move the camera around the room, it'll tell you when it's properly exposed when you set your settings. So you don't necessarily have to go to live view just to see the light meter. It's in multiple places around every camera. So what we're going to want to do this shot here is we're obviously going to want to take down the ISO a little bit first, probably to about a 1/1000, somewhere around there. And then we're going to want to take our shutter speed maybe up a little bit, and it looks like right about a 180 is good. If we want a little bit faster of a shutter speed, can bump the ISO up a little bit. It's good on this camera. We can, raise our shutter speed up to like a 1/125 just to get that, just so we're not getting so much motion blur. So basically one thing, you're just really going to want to master all these settings at the bottom and how to use them. Quite frankly, most of the time you're going to be at your highest aperture because you're going to want the most light coming into the camera. You're not going to want to be shooting pep rally photos at an f11. You're going to want that great, nice depth of field at an f2.8 on this certain lens. Some lenses don't go down to f2.8s. Some max out at, an f4.0, so you can't get that nice depth of field you'd be able to get out of these f2.8 lenses. This is one of the reasons why in yearbook and newspaper we bought a lot of pancake lenses. These pancake lenses have really, really high apertures that let a lot of light in and give great depth of field. This is one of the reasons why we bought them, so that we can achieve these nice depth of field pictures. So with this lens on f2.8, we get great depth of field. and really just learning how to properly expose the photo and not use, you do not want to use too low a shutter speed at an event that has a lot of action. You're going to want to be probably above a 1/125 at a pep rally. There's going to be people moving, there's going to be cheerleaders cheering, and you're going to want to also look at your photos often. You're not going to want to be shooting a lot of photos and not be previewing them after you physically take them. You're going to want to look and see if your photo is properly exposed. You don't want to show up and have all your photos, looking like that. You don't want to have all your photos looking like that. So what you're really going to want to do is just kind of use live view and just play around with the camera. Learn how different settings work in different environments. Learn about white balance. Learn about how to use the AF points. Learn about all this stuff because it'll really, really help you when you're out shooting around school, at different events, off campus, when there's not somebody easily available to just help you out. So one more thing you might be wondering is, why does every time you go to shoot a sport, do you have to carry that huge lens bag with that huge lens? The one reason is that those 70-200s f2.8s have a very, very high aperture that's good for shooting sports photos. Some of your little pancake lenses, like this 40mm f2.8 that's on here, is not going to give you a lot of zoom. So that's why we have those big lenses that let in a lot of light and let you zoom, so you're getting good action photos. You do not want to shoot sports with an old, just basic camera lens, because the apertures fluctuate as you zoom and you will not get good depth of field and you will not get really good light coming into the camera. The camera is going to have to work at high ISOs to achieve the really bright photos, which you don't want because you're going to get a ton of grain within your photos. So really just when you're going out to shoot a sport, you really want to shoot at the highest aperture possible, which, remember, your high apertures are your f2.8s, f1.8s, not your f22s. Those are your low apertures. The aperture scale is actually backwards. So that basically sums up all about this sort of camera workshop. So that's, basically how to use shutter speed, aperture, how to master ISO, how to set your white balance, and how to use all your AF points within the camera. So I really hope this helped.